Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming to this 30th anniversary year of the Edinburgh International Book Festival. And as most of you are no doubt aware, this particular weekend we're celebrating Stripped, which is an absolutely enormous comics event that's going on this year. And as part of that, we've got a writer and artist team here. We have Arthur C. Clarke award-winning novelist Lauren Beukes, who is now turned into a New York Times best-selling comics writer. And she joined just off the plane this morning from Spain, and he's straight here for your entertainment, the artist Inaki Miranda. So if you'd like to give them a good Edinburgh welcome, please. What we're going to do is, Lauren and Inaki have got a slideshow ready for you, and what they thought they would do is they're going to talk you through some of how they actually put together this, bearing in mind that the two of them put this together while they were working and living in different countries. Today's actually the first day they've met in person. So all of this was done by means of email, owl couriers, I think, as well, and occasional bit of telepathy.
And pigeons.
And screaming occasionally as well. So they're going to show you how it was put together, and they're going to talk you through it just now. So I'll let them go.
I also just want to say that this is an adult comic. I see we've got some kids with us. I will let you know when the inappropriate moments are coming up, and you can cover their eyes if need be. And maybe their ears. All right. So Fairest is an offshoot of Fables, which is Bill Willingham's multi-Eisner award-winning, multiple New York Times best-selling comic series. It's about fairy tale legends in the real world. And the way I came to the comic was that I met Bill in the bar at Worldcon. And I don't know if you guys have had this experience at the festival where you're sitting chatting to somebody and it turns out that they're super famous and you didn't realize, and you're halfway through the conversation and now you are struggling to find words. But Bill was incredibly nice to me, and he came to a reading I did, and after the reading he came to me and he was like, I really liked the reading and I'd like you to pitch my editor in New York on what you would do with Rapunzel. And being from South Africa, they were kind of hoping I might do an African fable, and that was an option, but Rapunzel's all about the hair. And Japanese fairy tale and horror is all about the hair. So I figured that was an obvious thing. So these are some of the covers which Adam Hughes did, and this is how we went through the story. So from that very kind of innocent one in the beginning to, she transforms to that by the end of the comic. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers, but there will be a couple, and I'll also warn you when there's spoilers if you want to cover your ears for that. This is one of the first pieces Inaki did, and I was just blown away. It's a double-page spread. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about this image? I really want Rapunzel's jacket. If anyone ever sees a jacket like that, please buy it and send it to me.
Well, it really was about showing her first, impression on Tokyo, and I wanted to make it like dynamic enough and interesting to make the reader's eye follow all through the page. And also it works like a poster, and it's the presentation of the characters, a lot of things at the same time. So I tried to integrate all in one, and it was hard.
Yeah, I think what was most challenging for me learning how to write comics was I've done kids animation before, but that's really straightforward. You do the storyboards, and I can't draw save my life, and you will see that later. But to learn what you can do with the panel layout. And I hadn't imagined that you could do, we actually have kind of 4 panels happening there with different action. The most important one is over here where there's an origami bird floating down the street. And to get all of that kind of into the scene, but in such a dynamic, interesting way. This is one of my favorite moments from the first issue, just amazing. This is based on The Slit-Faced Girl, which is a Japanese ghost story.
Of course, we don't know that at first when we first see her. She's wearing a mask, which isn't uncommon in parts of Asia. They've got one of these face masks on, and then the face mask comes off, and dentist's worst nightmare.
So Rapunzel has left a very dark history behind her in Japan, and this is kind of her going back. One of the major themes of my work is being haunted by the past. So this, Inaki was just really excited because...
Yes, she puts all the things that I really wanted. It's like she read my mind before starting the book. Because I got to draw everything that I loved, from old Japan and China to the modern Tokyo, pop culture, everything, dragons, gnomes, orcs, everything. I just
I think the email I got back from you on this one was dragons! Exclamation mark.
Oh yeah, dragons.
It is a good contrast between the one you had a minute, the street scene, because the street scene, it almost looks like it should be the cover for a J-pop album. And then the next one is something straight out of Asian mythology. It's a really nice shock. Here's Japan, bright, vibrant, modern, and here's old Japan. It's just lovely.
And I think Japan is one of those really interesting countries, like South Africa, where you have this hyper-modernity, but also kind of ancient culture and ancient beliefs. You still have shrines to lost children, which is something we managed to work into the story. And this is one of your favorite moments, I know.
Yeah, the Totoro moment.
Yeah.
If anyone's a fan of Miyazaki films, that's a little shout out to My Neighbor Totoro. And that's a shout out to another moment in My Neighbor Totoro.
I jumped out of the chair when I read the script for this one.
It's the expression in the taxi driver's face, actually. I really love that.
What I also love is just the detail, which I don't write. I mean, Inaki just puts it in. I mean, like the Pac-Man game happening on the side there, the billboards and the posters, it's just phenomenal. And like the design elements that he puts in are just incredible and really exciting. So this is Rapunzel's big transformation. This is like, I think in the script we called it her cowgirl moment. You know, like this is the epic Western showdown moment. And when I saw that, this was one of the scenes I saw and I was just like, oh my God, it's amazing. And I think this was supposed to be smaller, and the editor who we work with, Shelley Bond, who's amazing.
Oh yeah.
She was like, no, this is a one-pager. This is going big.
She really pushes me to put a rhythm to everything. You know, from the whole issue to every page has to have like a rhythm. That's why some panels are better as splash pages like this. She's awesome in that. She's really a great editor. She knows where to push.
She also knows where to push in the story, and like one of the best lines of dialogue was actually hers. I was like, yes, that's what I meant to say. Thank you. I'm glad you saw that. But she really has such a nuanced understanding of story, and it's amazing to work with an editor who really pushes you like that. This is just, we got so much into the story. Inaki accuses me of being crazy, but we got everything from dragons and modern Tokyo to, the Legend of the Minotaur, and Theseus. Rapunzel is Theseus, obviously, right? Come on. We're talking about Japan, Machine Gun Panda. One of our best moments.
Could you imagine if that was what we had at Edinburgh Zoo just now instead of the two quiet ones we had?
Everyone needs a Machine Gun Panda.
And I love the dialogue. You can't see it here, but the raccoon says something very funny in this panel.
Yeah. I should have used the pages with the. What does he say?
I know, something like, oh well, like back to war.
Okay, so Rapunzel starts. This is the opening page of the first issue, and what's for sale in the bookstore is the trade paperback. So it's everything collected, the whole story in one. So Rapunzel goes from this, and she's very much kind of haunted by what she describes as the black dog of her past, and these suppressed memories and this thing that she hasn't dealt with. And she goes, that's how she was in Japan, and she ends up as that. And that transformation which Inaki did.
Well, you did in the script, really.
Yeah, okay.
Let's be honest.
High five. But visually, to like show the difference in her character and personality and like how that's come through, and to see that journey. And I'm trying to avoid spoilers. We're going to have a couple of spoiler moments, but yeah. All right, this is a big spoiler. If you don't want to spoil it, close your eyes. Okay, ready? So that was one of my favorite shots.
That's a very J-horror kind of image as well, isn't it? Very much.
And that's kind of the major Japanese myth that I was referencing. So it's over now. You're fine. All right. So design, just coming up with a look for Rapunzel. She'd only been featured in a 4-page strip before, a 4-pager before. So we didn't really know a lot about her. We knew that her hair grew 4 inches an hour, and that she had to get it cut like 5 times a day. And the first thing Inaki did was start looking at what her hair growth would look like. And I think I sent you a particular French actress from the...
Yes, I don't know her name.
I can't remember her name. It's one of William Gibson's favorite actresses, and he had mentioned her to me in passing, and I Googled her, and I can't remember her name now, which makes this whole anecdote moot. But she's an incredibly beautiful woman, and we used her kind of as a reference for these images. But that was kind of how the hair growth would work. And the way we solved the story to be able to give her multiple haircuts was she gets a magic hairpin, which she has to... it comes at a terrible cost, and that allows her hair to stop growing so she can actually leave the Fables community in New York and be able to travel to Japan. Just a close-up of the hair. We also did a lot of fashion references, trying to get her look right.
Yeah.
The T-shirt that she's wearing is actually a riff off a Japanese vintage design. I can't remember the name. This was like 2 years ago that we were working on this. I'm sorry, but we did, and we did a lot of research. We traded a lot of emails and kind of art references and everything. It was really fun. And so but some of these I don't know what you were thinking. What is that? Seriously?
I just was. No, the funniest thing about designing a character like this is, I learned that already. No one from here will do it. And not until you start the book, the story, that's the character. All these are like pre-sketches, and even the one that gets picked up, it's not the one, because it's going to be different once you.
Going to evolve as you're working along.
It's like, because when the script comes, there's a soul to the character that you don't have when you're designing it. So it's all really pre-sketches.
And that's just kind of an image. Were you inspired by Yolandi from Die Antwoord, that crazy South African band? Had you heard of them?
No.
Okay, because that's a very Yolandi haircut.
Those were the Fairest that you sent.
Okay, so Inaki wanted to talk through the design process, or the process of how it goes. So the way it works is I pitch a paragraph synopsis for the issue. Shelley approves that, and Bill Willingham obviously oversaw the whole process. Then I write a breakdown of each scene and a scene is typically about 3 to 4 pages. You don't want to go less than 2 pages, mostly. Rules are made to be broken, but a good length for a scene is about 3 to 4 pages. So I break it down, and you have 20 pages to play with, although we sometimes begged and pleaded to go over that. So this was the script for a particular issue, or particular scene.
It's probably worth reminding folk, when this is first being done, what you'll see in the bookshop over there is the collected edition, but when you're first doing it, it's coming out in monthly issues like a traditional comic, which means you've only got a certain amount of pages. You can't go over it, so you've really got to write within that. That's something you've got to think about.
And it's really difficult. And being a novelist, and I really love dialogue. And in comics, you are not allowed to have a lot of dialogue. You can have one, unless you're Chris Ware. You can kind of, you can have 1 or 2 lines, and that's it. In a mainstream comic like this, 2 lines of dialogue, that's it. That's got to carry everything. It's got to carry the subtext, the character, the story, just absolutely everything. And I found that very difficult, but I managed to rein myself in. So that's okay. So maybe you can take over from here. So that's what I would send to Inaki.
Yeah. So this is the part where I have to break my brain, because there's something that's not in the script that you have to put visually. That's the rhythm of the visuals. So this is what happens. You'll describe it better than me. Describe what's happening.
A flock of origami cranes breaks through the window of Rapunzel's apartment.
Okay, then go to the next page. And this. That's the
aftermath. So they kind of flinch away from it, and Joel, who's cutting her hair, is flailing with the scissors. She bends down and she picks up one of the cranes, and she unfolds it, and it's got a message in kanji which reads, "Your children."
Right. So the story is there. It's inside the panels, but it's missing the rhythm that it should have for the reader. So you go.
And this is also not something I knew. This is something that Inaki really had to kind of hold my hand through, is to get the rhythm right and to get it better.
So I tried another. I always imagine there's a river and you have to cross it, and there are stones. If you put them all in the same size and equally distance from each other, and the human mind doesn't have it gets bored easily. You have to change the shapes of the stones and put in different shapes and sizes and different places, so the mind can go to one to other without losing itself in that.
So it's about creating a rhythm which isn't monotonous.
That's it. It happens with everything, with words and with music.
Absolutely.
And the rhythm has to change depending which pitch you're at the story. Obviously, something more frantic is going to be quick staccato panels. Other ones you want a long panel.
That's it. You have to make it interesting.
Yeah.
Shelley talks about in terms of cinematic technique. If you want fast action, you've got to have really kind of narrow panels. Really quick.
Quick cuts.
Yes.
Quick cuts, absolutely. Or a big elaborate splash or a big reveal moment. So that's really how.
So it ended up, if you go forward, this is my first try, but still there's no rhythm because it's like all the shapes are almost the same. Then go again. And this is you have big shape here. See, it's the difference. It flows and makes this way.
So you have the high impact drama moments,
Right.
the recovery,
And then your eyes goes up
yeah,
and goes this
and
way.
then you have the shock and then the reveal of
That's
what
it.
she's seen.
So there's like a rhythm there with shapes and close-ups and everything. And then the color like adds the last.
I just want to point
Face.
out that Rapunzel has great taste in nail polish. So yeah, and the colorist Eva or Eva?
Eva.
Eva de la
Eva.
Cruz is just absolutely amazing, and she really came into her own in this comic. It was amazing, phenomenal. So again, these are just some. This is part of my process. So I wrote this scene, and I was like, Tomoko is a Yakuza boss, and she's looking at her page of Yakuza accounting, and Inaki duly drew that. And then Shelley was like, well, what's on this page? I'm like, I don't know. And it's Japanese accounting. I don't know what that looks like. And I try to Google it, and nothing comes up if you Google search that. So eventually, this is the power of Twitter. I asked on Twitter, I was like, please, can anyone help me with Japanese accounting? And a friend of mine came back, and he's like, I have a friend in Japan, and they own a cafe in, oh, no, it hasn't come out. No. Okay, well, anyway, they sent me 2 pages of Japanese accounting, including the name of their cafe in Shibuya. So there's the name of their cafe as one of the cover-up businesses in there. And I'm afraid this is very blurry, but if you see it in the actual comic, you can see. So that's kind of one of the things you have to think about as a writer. If you have a book of arcane magic symbols or Yakuza accounting, you actually have to fill the freaking page.
It's not a problem when you're doing prose, is it?
No.
It's a problem when you're doing comics, right?
Completely. And then some Easter eggs I threw in. This is Zulu mythology. I always like to throw a little reference back to South Africa in my books. And this is a particular Zulu legend about a pair of twins who were sacrificed. In Zulu traditional belief, twins are evil and you have to kill one. Okay, so this might be the part which is inappropriate for young children. We talked a lot about how to deal with sex and violence, and this came up. Rapunzel is a very sensual woman. She's all about. She loves sex. She loves movies. She loves, which 2 things totally go together. When she's living in Japan, I kind of based her on Sei Shonagon, who wrote the Pillow Book, and she kind of writes these beautiful haiku about engaging with the senses and everything else. So there was going to be a sex element to the book always. And in Japan, she goes there to get away from this terrible thing which has happened in her life. And she kind of falls into life there. And she's smoking opium, and she falls in love with Kitsune, or a fox spirit, a fox woman. And there are a lot of Japanese legends about the fox wife. And Inaki sent me the first page. And it's supposed to be this very tender, beautiful moment. What is happening there? And I sent this email back to Inaki. I was like, dude, like, seriously. Comics are in so much trouble with the way they depict sexuality. It's like just tits and boob. We cannot have 2 women scissoring. That is not okay. And it was actually the first tense moment we'd ever had. We'd only ever communicated via email. And he was like, Lauren.
Why not?
Actually sent me this quite scathing email back, which really put me in my place about, yes, of course, it should be about the erotic. It's not about like the pornographic. It's about creating the tenderness and the emotion. A long lecture about sexuality in comics and how it's kind of overburdened. And furthermore, that's not her leg, it's her tail. So yeah, but then it became a running joke where we said, is that panda scissoring Jack? And every time there was an art critique, and we could like fit in a scissoring joke. We're very mature, we really are. But we try to handle the sex in a very kind of more erotic and beautiful way. It's a really tender relationship, and using hair and everything to hide what needed to be hidden, but not to shy away from it either. And I think it worked out really beautifully. The other side of that, of course, is the violence. And violence in comics is often meaningless. The Hulk, first of all, there's no risk. He's the Hulk, and what's going to happen to him? Nothing, ever. And often you see somebody get their brains blown out, and it means nothing. I wanted to make, just a violent attack means something, and to show what it meant to Rapunzel, and so you really felt kind of the emotional impact of it. So we had a scene where she has to have, she really has to get beaten very badly, and I said I wanted in the page description, I said, I don't know how you're going to do this, and I did this in Inaki quite a lot. So I don't know how you're going to do this. Figure it out. Good luck.
Put them scissoring.
But just I need you to feel the relentlessness, until she passes out. That this guy is just beating her up, and his anger and what that does to her. And I really need you to do that in a really powerful way, so that readers are shocked by it, because we should be shocked by violence, honestly.
You didn't want it to be cartoon. You wanted to show it's real. Somebody's being hurt. This isn't
Absolutely,
pleasant.
exactly.
It's not a cartoon. This is nasty.
And I want to show you the black and white, because I think the black and white's even more powerful, actually, with just the black and white and red. So that's how Inaki did it. And I didn't actually describe the panels, but I love what he does at the end here, where they fray away. And that felt like such an amazing visual metaphor for what's happening to her in that moment, and kind of what her experience is. How the hell did you come up with that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea, actually.
Well, the first thing I thought is like violence. If you want to really convey something brutal, it's about repetition. I mean, somebody that doesn't stop, it's not just one punch. He just keeps on going. And then I wanted to get inside Rapunzel's head and what she's feeling that moment, and I thought she's fading out. He keeps on hitting her, and she's just fading out.
The final few do look as if they're all from her point of view as well. I mean, that's her just blacking in and out.
Yeah, both points of view. Also, there's some that are his point of view.
Start, you can see her, but then towards the end,
yes.
Most of it is you're seeing him coming at her now, and
yes,
reality's fracturing for her as he wallops.
Absolutely, and you could have done that with just kind of a fade to black, but the fact that you did the fracturing is so beautiful, and that's the color version. I think the black and white's much more powerful. I grew up reading 2000 AD, and I kind of almost wish, I mean, Eva's coloring is amazing, but I kind of wish it had been in black and white. I think it's just because I've got that association with comics. So, all right, let's talk about some more fun stuff now that we've done the really heavy stuff, and the rest is all kid appropriate, I promise. So this is me versus Inaki. Sometimes when I'm doing a page and I'm trying to figure out the page layout, I have to sketch it out, because that's actually, and if you want to write comics, it's a good way of doing it, of trying to figure out how the storytelling should be. So I want you guys to tell me honestly, what do you think of my art? Okay, so that's Rapunzel right at the top. That's a high-heeled shoe. That's her hailing a taxi. This is a dead samurai. I want you to see the emotion. There's a koi fish nibbling at him. We're kind of like three-quarter looking up, but then also behind him, that kind of scribble there is it's a citadel, like a Japanese palace on fire. And this was actually our first fight.
And a unicorn.
This is where Inaki said, "You're doing my job. What am I supposed to do now?"
Definitely. Well, he's going to go back to his first job was working at Foot Locker, so he's just going to. I just need a good inker, and he says I'm there. So that's his version. Whatevs. I just want to take you through. Okay, this is a slight spoiler. So this is one of my illustrations, and this is for a double-page spread. It was going to be kind of a big history reveal from a different character's perspective. So the evil Rapunzel came and made out with the fox woman, and you can see there's hearts and love. And then she teamed up with the bad guy, and they're going, ha, 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 and they stole the ball of power. And then they killed the other woman, and they go, ha, ha, ha. And then there's fire and ruin, and Rapunzel goes, ha, 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 again. And the ghost, these are actually how my scripts go, I promise. And then the ghost is fleeing away, and she's, oh no, she's been killed, and she says, whoa, and the fox says, whoa, and it's all just ruin and devastation.
And all that in old Japanese engraving.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, definitely. So, so I said to Inaki, we need to do this in a beautiful old Japanese engraving style. It's going to be a really big, important part of the book, double-page spread. It's going to be beautiful. That's his version. Again, I really don't know why I need him. Seriously. This is rough, obviously. So just absolutely amazing and beautiful. And how long did this take you?
I think a whole day.
And the next day I was like, oh, you know what? I don't actually need that scene after all. I'm gonna change it. So, how many bottles of whiskey do I owe you?
4.
Oh, yeah. The other favorite moment was where he'd drawn 4 pages of goblins in Western armor, and I was like, I know it says in the script Western armor, I meant samurai armor, I'm really sorry. And he had to go back and redraw. And these are, okay, so that's my art versus his. These are just some amazing moments that Inaki did, which I didn't write, and he just added so much dimension. The girl in the bunny suit, I don't know what is wrong with his mind, but he came up with her, and she's really cool. And I keep hoping to see cosplayers. The name of the karaoke bar is Shiny Girl, which is a shout out to my novel, The Shiny Girls. There's a birth scene, and the person giving birth is hallucinating off her face. And I just said she's hallucinating off her face, and Inaki brought this in. He drew this. And it's just completely insane and beautiful and amazing and better than anything I could have imagined or come up with. And then this is this I think is probably my favorite panel out of the entire comic. It's this, I said there's a nest of hair in the forest, and that's what Inaki drew. And I remember seeing this for the first time, kind of scrolling down to go through the PDF on my page. And I scrolled down to that panel, and I kind of had to grab onto my desk because it was so beautiful. It was just incredible.
Well, the funniest part is that I totally thought that this is what you wanted, that you had in mind.
Yeah, clearly, totally, no, absolutely.
And I even thought, how the hell does she get down from there?
I don't know.
It's delightfully creepy as well. I mean,
in the spring panel.
Yeah, you dropped it to the ground.
Yeah, I dropped it.
Well, I figured that just the hair keeps growing.
Right,
that's
what
how
I
it
thought.
drops. Yeah,
yes.
we didn't have plot holes. I don't know what you mean.
It looks as if it could get out of a Pan's Labyrinth or something. It would fit quite nicely into a Del Toro film.
No,
It's
definitely. It's
creepy.
just so beautiful and so creepy and amazing. I really loved it. Okay, so we've been cheating on each other. Inaki, I'll do mine first. I've got a short called Birdy. It's an 8-pager coming out in the Witching Hour. It's with an amazing South African artist called Gerard Human. And it's about a little witch who scrounges the dumps in a future Cape Town. And the seagulls bring her objects, which are messages from the dead.
It's the first time I see it. Thank you.
Yeah, I like this name more than you, so whatever. And Inyaki's been working on a new project, which he's going to tell us about.
Yeah, it's Coffin Hill. It's written by Caitlin Kittredge.
Who's also a novelist.
Also a novelist. I only work for novelists.
Good thinking.
And it's a supernatural horror series about a witch. It's a teenage, low-life, high society girl that is a witch and sets loose a dark power in the town where she lives. And that's all I'm going to say.
That's coming out this autumn.
Yes.
Some of you probably know already. There's a whole raft of new Vertigo titles coming from DC, including the new Sandman one as well. And that's going to be part of it this autumn. I think it's about half a dozen different titles.
Yeah,
it's
six
spread
new
over
titles.
September.
Yes.
6 interesting new titles, and quite a few of them are from new folks. So it's going to be
they all look
It's
amazing.
going to be quite interesting.
I think what's also amazing is Shelley Bond really pushes for female creators. So I'm just jealous that Caitlin got there first.
I was actually going to ask you about. I mean, obviously the thing with Fairest is that it's concentrating on the female characters from the Fables universe. So did you see that as a good way of you put the women front and center here?
I didn't really think about that. It was just a really cool way of writing a really interesting character. I like to write women.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have any problem writing a man. But it wasn't. We didn't go in with an agenda saying, "Oh, well, comics are so messed up, and we gotta have more female characters." But it's nice, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't go in with an agenda. You should go in writing the best possible character you can.
Yeah.
But we do definitely need more women. And I see that. I have a 4.5-year-old daughter, and there are no comics for her. There really aren't. I mean, I've just picked up some here, thank God. But yeah, there are no superhero comics. They're all tits and ass, and the only interesting characters are the villains. Catwoman and Poison Ivy, and she is 4.5, and she doesn't understand moral ambiguity, and she shouldn't have to. She should have a hero that she can get behind.
I think there's a problem as well. A lot of those used to be, when I was a kid, those comics were aimed at 10-year-olds. They're now aimed at people that are 20 plus.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. If you've got a 4-year-old that likes superheroes, Batgirl's a great one.
Yeah.
It's written by a female writer, Gail Simone, which is fantastic and really good, emotional as well as full
Isn't
of
it quite
action.
violent?
It is in places, but it's not aimed at a 4-year-old. That's
Yeah.
the problem. I mean, they do things like Teeny Titans, which is like little kiddie versions of your superheroes.
Teeny Titans,
I'm not sure kids go for that either.
No, but you know what? The problem with Teeny Titans is it's an in-joke. You have to
Yeah.
already know the characters, and they don't have adventures. They just kind of crack one-liners at each other. And I'm like, well, if they were having adventures, that would be cool, but they're not.
But it is a bit worrying because you think, well, where's the next generation of
Absolutely.
readers of that kind of comic going to come from if you're not getting them in? When we were young, you read those comics because they were aimed at a younger readership. Now, if they're only aimed at 20 plus, where are they going to get in? They're not going to suddenly start reading them at 20 if they haven't read them earlier on. But what sort of comics did you get here for your girl?
I got one by Emma, I can't pronounce her surname.
Fiacelli?
Yes, Fiacelli, called, I can't remember, I literally just bought it, it's in my bag. Avalon, I think.
Yes.
And Gary Northfield's Teeny Tiny Saurus is
Which
lovely.
is wonderful.
It's very, very cool. I wish there were more girls. There's only one girl dinosaur and she's pink. But she's cool. I mean, she's great. And we read ElfQuest. I'm trying to get her into Bone, but she's a snob because it's in black and white, and she'll only read in color.
Awesome.
But Bone is amazing,
Yeah.
so I'm going to have to buy the color version.
Did you get any of the Phoenix comic? So
Yeah.
this is a new weekly for regular comic for kids.
I've got a subscription to the Phoenix on iPad, but what frustrates me about the Phoenix is that it is a weekly comic.
Yeah.
So you have the shorts, and I can't read weekly comics. I can't read monthly comics. I can only read graphic novels because you finish the story and you're like, "Where's the next episode?" I have to wait a month, and and the Phoenix is great, but I want the collected editions. I'm like, when you guys are finished and you've got the collected edition of that story, let me know and I'll go buy the trade.
I think that's not uncommon with a lot of people. I mean, I know in my own book group occasionally we've done graphic novels, and some of the other people have only read prose, and they come to a graphic novel and they wonder why there's sometimes, at the end of a chapter there's a bit of a cliffhanger going. That's because originally it came out monthly and you had to wait another month. You're going, oh, you had to wait 4 weeks to read the next part of this story. And some people can do that and some people can't. I mean, just looking at yourselves, is there anybody here that reads them monthly, or do you only wait till you see them collected, or you still go for the monthlies? I think people reading the monthlies going down a bit, but the collections, the nice thing about the collections obviously is they're spreading out into mainstream bookstores and into libraries and obviously into the bookstore across the road in the 10th year.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes them a bit more accessible to people, and obviously a lot more of them are now being collected and put on digital, so even if you don't read in paper, you can still, it is making the medium a lot more accessible, I think, to a wider audience.
And I think digital also gives you a way of trying out a comic to see, you can buy a single issue and see how it goes and how you feel about it. Although it does also take, 20 pages. It was very frustrating with the first issue of Fairest, because we had to re-establish the world for people who, Shelley wanted this to be, if you've never read Fables before, the whole point is that you can pick up Fairest 2 and not have to have the backstory. There are rewards for people who know the universe, and you'll recognize some of the characters and it'll be great, but you can actually come to it completely fresh. But which meant I had to kind of establish the world, and then also establish Rapunzel's story, and then get to the actual action of moving the story forward, and in 20 pages, and it was really hard.
That is quite a trick to try and do something like that. I mean, to put that in context, I know if you haven't read Fables, it's been running for about 8 years now, or
10 years.
10 years now. I mean, so if you had to know that before, that would automatically cut about 2/3 of your readership out for a new series. So.
All you need to know is that there are fairy tale exiles living in the real world. Once Upon a Time basically ripped off the plot of Fables.
There is now. The Fairest, I found the Fairest series so far is a really good way into Fables if you haven't read.
Yeah.
Once you've read that, you will definitely want to go back and start reading the back volumes.
And just by the way, they've got book 1 and book 2 in the bookstore. Book 1 is by Bill Willingham and Phil Jimenez.
Jimenez, I don't know.
And book 2 is by Inaki and I. Book 1 is about Sleeping Beauty, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So book 1 is Sleeping Beauty. Book 2 is Rapunzel.
I asked a question by one of my friends who was at your talk when you were discussing your novel, The Shining Girl, recently, and she'd already read Zoo City, which I'm sure some of you have read as well. It's the one that Lauren won the Arthur C. Clarke Award for. And in that one, people have kind of animals kind of attached to them to do with a kind of spiritual repentance. I suppose if something's happened in their life, they suddenly wake up and find they now have an animal which is psychically linked to them. So she wanted to know, do you have a spirit animal, and what is it? And is it a sloth like your main character in the book?
I do have I've got 2 spirit animals actually.
2 spirit animals. That's just being greedy.
I know. But the one's extinct, so I can't. It's my ghost spirit animal. The megalodon.
The giant of sharks.
The giant shark, and the squirrel, because I'm kind of a bit squirrely myself. I get very itchy and nervous, and any rat that is clever enough to disguise itself with a fluffy tail gets my vote.
Inaki, have you got a spirit guide? Got a spirit animal?
Not really. No.
Lauren's got. Oh, we're gonna have to get.
I'm gonna have to lend you one.
Yeah,
have to get him one.
Give me a good one.
Right. Well, it depends if you work with other people again.
Right, I think we should maybe move over to it. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask for Inaki and Lauren here? And if you do, if you could wait for the microphone to come to you first. Any questions? This is the bit where everyone all goes quiet and looks at their toes.
He's flown from Madrid, and we're going to torture him. Somebody ask him a horrible, hard question. Come on.
And I haven't slept since yesterday, so that's why I'm so dumb right now.
So I'm a big fan of Fables. I love it, and Fairest is wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Were there any characters from the Fables series that you were particularly excited to kind of bring into Fairest, apart from Rapunzel?
I originally wanted Reynard the Fox, but I think that actually would have been too confusing with the Kitsune. And who else? It was amazing to have Frau Tottenkinder, who is, obviously the witch who cast Rapunzel out of the tower, or who kept her trapped in the tower, when she fell pregnant, cast her out, which is the original fairy tale. And what else? Jack was actually great. I know a lot of people they haven't liked Jack since the Jack Fables series, but he's so much trouble. And like the worst possible person Rapunzel could have been stuck with to go to Japan would be Jack. And it was really great to just have this absolute awful wild card who would just create trouble and try and shag anything that moved, and how she would have to try and deal with that. And the fact that he does kind of twist the story at the end in a way that you hadn't expected, because he's Jack and because he's a moron. And because he's always out for himself, and that was really fun to play with. I don't know who you were excited to work with.
Oh, Jack.
Yeah.
I remember laughing while drawing.
Oh yeah.
The first thing in the plane.
Yeah.
I was actually laughing while trying to figure out his expression, and I started laughing like, oh well.
There's a really cool moment at the end of the first issue where Jack thinks he's going to get lucky, and he says, like I said, I'm not very mature. But it was one of my favorite lines. He says to this character, he's like, "Are we going to have sex now?" And she's like, "No, I'm going to eat you."
Well,
and it's just such a beautiful
but
moment.
there's one after that also is very funny when he says, once he sees what she does, she says, "We should have a safe word."
I don't think that made it into the final.
Oh, no?
No, I don't think it made it. I think Shelley cut that. Did it?
No,
Did it? Is it there? Okay,
I'm
awesome.
sure it's in there.
Cool. Yay.
Is there anyone else wants to ask a question?
Yes.
Down at the front here.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm a bit croaky. Just to say, I've noticed that a lot of South African women particularly seem to be writing very interesting works that are kind of hybrid in genre, or doing interesting things with genre. And if you thought there was any connection between being a woman writer and being interested in genre crossover.
There are quite a few guys in South Africa doing genre crossover as well. I don't know. I don't know if having a vagina necessarily gives me more genre-ness. Or less, yeah. I think there's some really interesting writers coming out of South Africa at the moment. What's interesting is that Sarah Lotz, who's got an amazing book coming out next year called The Three. They're basically evil children in plane crashes. And they may or may not be the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. It's very cool. It's a wonderful novel. But she and I actually work together in animation. And there's a very small kind of scene in South Africa. And it's growing really fast. But there's some other terrific writers like Kat Hellison. Sally Partridge is doing some really interesting stuff. She's just coming up as a YA writer. Sarah is the most prolific woman on earth. She writes with her teenage daughter, Savannah Lotz. They write together as Lily Hearn, and they've got a YA zombie apocalypse novel, which is actually quite political in an interesting, fun way, called Deadlands. And she also writes as one half of S.L. Gray, who writes the most amazing consumer horror called The Mall.
I read that was quite horrific.
Yeah, no,
and
totally.
disturbing.
Very disturbing.
Very cool urban horror. I mean, instead of having the old haunted house, this is a shopping mall. It's the sort of thing that you're going to see in any city. And the fact that the creepy things are happening in something that's so everyday just makes it about 10 times creepier. It's wonderful.
So glossy and so,
It's very well written.
Yeah, no,
very
it was
slick.
fantastic. So Sarah's just amazing. And then she's also 1/3 of this new trio, Helena S. Page. She's the S. And it's my editor, Helen Moffat, Sarah Lotz and Paige Nick writing Choose Your Own Adventure erotica, which is really cool. It's called A Girl Walks Into a Bar. And the whole point was to do pro-sex, feminist, sex positive erotica.
Do they have scissoring in that one, or
No.
is that still up in there?
I don't. There is a lesbian scene. I haven't. They're my friends. I can't read it. Yes.
Oh, someone here.
It's possibly going to sound like a stupid question. It's almost a grudge question from my childhood, right? Because I've got dark hair. Reading the fairy stories, did it occur to you not to make her blonde? And then a sort of, just as a more sort of talking point after that, how do you feel generally about ways in which different racial types and elements of that, particularly since you've gone to Japan with this one, which I haven't read yet, but it looks amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. But
Thanks.
that's my question.
We were working with a character who'd already been established. So, we already had that restriction. I do think the blonde thing, despite being bottle blonde myself, it's crap. And my daughter has two friends, and they're sisters, and the one is blonde and the one is brunette. And all the little girl heroes in books are blonde. Yep. And it's just, and Barbie's blonde, and and all those stereotypes. It is really, really frustrating and irritating. And I like to subvert stereotypes whenever I can. So unfortunately, just with this one, we had an established character, but it was great to be able to go to Japan and kind of pick up some of those fairy tales, and to be able to play with some kind of different tropes there. We tried to sneak in some African fables as well, just in the first scene, but it was Mami Wata, who's the mermaid spirit, West African. But she's in the background. You can't even really see her. Like we really and we spoke about this. We spoke about how in Fables, it is very white. There aren't a lot of African fables, and we try to bring in black characters wherever we could. There's a black samurai, and I don't care how likely that is. Bite me. It's a comic. It's made up. You're okay with a panda with a machine gun, but you're not okay with a black samurai,
Nick Fury's black for the movies. What's the problem?
Yeah,
It's
no,
as long
totally.
as the character plays well.
Absolutely, and I think I would love to see a black Spider-Man. Donald what?
They've got a Hispanic one now.
But
Yes.
but who's the guy from Community who was who Donald Glover. Donald Glover, come on! I know. I would watch the hell out, and he's so cute as well. Like that would be amazing. I'd much rather watch him than Tobey Maguire. So I'm totally for more diversity in comics. Yeah.
Me
Anyone
too.
else? Oh, over in the front here, please.
Not about Donald Glover.
Oh, come on. We can geek out about that later.
It was a question. This is your first graphic novel or graphic series, isn't it? I'm someone who's hoping to start out in that field, and I'm here to do research. And basically, I wanted to ask what advice the two of you have for someone just starting out in this field and trying to get a toehold in and try to kind of help diversify some of the stuff that's out there and have fun like you all are doing just now. What's good advice that you two would have?
Inaki's been doing this longer than I have. I would suggest going to bars and try to run into famous writers.
It works.
And impress
That's
them
what the
somehow.
Spiegel tent's for over there in the corner.
Yeah, but it's the same in novels.
Yeah,
so
no, absolutely. I would definitely recommend going to festivals and events and trying to meet people and asking for advice. And if you can get a moment to show your portfolio, my life theory is be cheeky, but don't be an asshat. So by all means, say to someone, do you mind if I show you my portfolio, or do you mind if having a look at my script? But if they say no, then say thank you so much for your time, and move on. And they might say no. I mean, I know it's a pet hate of a lot of people is that they don't want to look at stuff. But then see if, often comics conventions have portfolio reviews, where you can go and sit with an artist and it's actually an event, get a ticket for that and go along to that. I don't know if they have writers' workshops. I've only ever been to one.
That's
I've only
tougher.
I think that's much tougher. But Shelley's advice is to write and to draw and to put your stuff up and put it up online. And if it's really good, you can send her a link and she can see it, or hopefully it grows an audience and she'll end up seeing it anyway. So the most important thing, it's the same with writing novels, that you learn to do it by doing it. And you have to have something to show to be able to get out there. But it is very tricky. I've been wanting to write comics for a very long time, and I just hadn't got around to it. And it turned out that Bill Willingham basically shoved me through the door into Vertigo's offices, going, "No, I'm not ready, please," and forced me to do it, and that was amazing. So it's also about looking out for opportunity, and when opportunity is ready, grabbing onto it. Your advice?
No, it's almost the same. I mean, I think it's like you have to grab a balance of being humble and at the same time believing in yourself. And I don't know who said that that when you think you're ready, it's because you're not ready. And when you don't think you're ready, I mean, when you still, I think I'm not ready, that's when you're starting to be ready, because you don't realize that, because you're so focused in trying to do your work, to show it, that you start becoming not weak, but unsure of your skills, and that's a good sign, because when you're unsure of your skills, that you're starting to see the path in front of you, and that's, I think, when you go to an editor, and an editor is able to see that in you. So I think.
Yeah. I think what editors look for in artists and writers is a voice and a style that is particular, that actually expresses something of you. And the way you learn your voice or your style, of course you're going to have your inspiration. You're going to have the artists or writers that you're influenced by, and you're going to start out basically writing fan fiction, no matter what it is, or drawing in exactly the same style. But you just keep drawing and you bring in all your other influences. And I think you should consume promiscuously. You should just read and draw and as much as you can, and get as many influences as you can, and remix them inside yourself.
And enjoy.
And enjoy it. And what Inaki's saying about being afraid and being uncertain. There have been studies which show that the more competent people are, the more doubt they have, because they're aware of that there's more that they don't know. And the people who are totally overconfident are actually the incompetent morons. Because they have no idea that their work is crap. So it's good to be insecure, and it's good to be scared, and that I think that also shows that you're being ambitious. That if you are scared, you're pushing yourself, and that's good. But I think it's a good point. Also, don't show your work before it's ready. Right. Keep polishing, and don't think oh, this person's here, I have got to get to them. Actually make sure that your work is ready.
I think everybody knows. If you're being sincere with yourself, you know that you still can't do things. Like draw a hand, for example. You can't just put black on it and say, okay, that's a hand. Inside of you that you still don't have the skills to do it. So when you show that, everybody will see that you can't draw a hand. I'm just saying an example. So it's being sincere with yourself and knowing that where you're at every time.
It's also worth noting, particularly in Britain, we've got a really vibrant small press scene. There's people doing their own comics, self-published. There's a lot of them across the road in 5 Art Charlotte Square this weekend, selling some of their stuff, which I encourage you to go to. And they're worth. That's a great in-place to try out your stuff. You're doing it in a shorter form, and it's a nice community of people. They're all reviewing it, and they're really supportive. So if somebody says something back, I liked it, but they might give you some criticism, but in a good way, not in a trying to put the boot weight into you. And they support each other, and you'll find that as you do that, you'll start to evolve more of your own. Just like you're saying, the more you write it, you'll start to evolve your own style, and you'll start to think, yeah, I'm ready to do something longer now, and really to start to pitch to to an actual publisher. So the small press scene in this country is a really good place to try your skills at.
I think 2000 AD, I don't know if they're still doing it, but I know at one point they had an audition Future Shocks.
Yep, if you're still doing it, yeah.
You look on the 2000 AD website, but I think it's a 6-page story. If you're a writer, you can send them a pitch script, and you can do it cold. You can be straight off.
They've had 2 or 3 this year from a friend of mine that's small press, being self-published, and then he's had about 3 Future Shocks in 2000 AD this year. Anywhere from 2 to sort of 6 pages.
Yeah, no,
little short, self-contained story, and it's a great showcase. Suddenly you're in there being read by
absolutely
several thousand people.
And then you also have something to show to a mainstream editor. So.
And you should remember that Alan Moore started doing Future Shocks in 2000 AD before he was absolutely enormous. So it's another route. It's another route. Right, we've got time for some more questions.
Japan is clearly a big passion for both of you. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what in particular about the culture, aside from the fairy tale link, that really inspired you or you enjoyed about using in the world.
It's very important to us to get our references right in our research. So I made Inaki we both went and bought out the same book on yokai, which are Japanese monsters, and I made you watch Tekani Crete.
Oh yeah, I love that movie. Yeah. Thank you for that. I didn't know it.
I love Japanese horror. The Audition by Takashi Miike is, I think, my top scariest movie. It's just horrible. Yeah, Kiri. I love Haruki Murakami's work. I love Banana Yoshimoto. I love Ryo Murakami.
The Pillow Book was something you worked in there as well.
Absolutely.
Is it not? I mean, it's a classic of Japanese literature.
And but also like Japanese pop artists like Takashi Murakami, who I worked into a story about hairballs, which is available on the SFX website if you If you need more hairball action, you know, you can go there. But you know, his pop art is just amazing. And like, you know, I grew up with manga, and when I was in South Africa, you know, we were so isolated from the rest of the world. We really were, and there was sanctions and all kinds of things. And I was part of a manga piracy club. And we would, you know, and that was the only way to get stuff. There was, you know, there was no internet. There was no ways you could get the stuff. Sorry, I should say anime. So we would, you know, somebody would get in an anime video, and it would just get kind of passed around, and everybody would watch it. So I grew up with a lot of that kind of craziness. But Japanese culture is just deep and rich, and it was really fun to play in. I wanted to go back to Japan, but that's, well, not back, but go to Japan to do a research trip, because I really believe in, you know, getting a real sense of like a place. But the tsunami had just happened, and it was impossible. Your Japanese influences?
Well, first I loved Takeshi Murakami, the one you mentioned, and Miyazaki.
Oh, Miyazaki, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think this is a strange mix of mysticism from the past and visual explosion in the present. And even in the past, it was very visual. And I think the whole thing is like a bomb for me. It's like that I like. I also like martial arts, and there's so much inside of that it's everywhere. No, I don't know what else to say. It's just so much in it, in an island.
Any more questions?
I think there's another one up front here.
Oh, yep.
It's more of a sort of technical question. How do you go about deciding where you're going to do the double page splash? And does there have to be one every issue in the installments, or how did you go about picking these amazing, massive things?
I think we pick it, like the three of us, is something dynamic that she puts it in the script, and then Shelley mentions another page. Shelley Bond, I mean the editor, that could be a splash page. And then it's like what I said before, looking for the rhythm of the whole issue, and look what's the moment that best is for a splash page, for a big panel. It's just, you can't explain it because it's rhythm, and it's like every artwork has that rhythm that you can't explain, because it's like when you're doing it, it's when you know where you have to stand or take from here, put there. So I think it's just the mind that goes and says, okay, let's put it here, and you like it. And that's how I work. I don't know. I imagine a musician. Sorry, composing. I don't think he thinks so much. He just, plays.
And then he knows it's time for the drum solo.
Right, from experience.
Yeah, it's the drama. It's where it would be most dramatically poignant. To have that kind of, that classic Western shot where, she's like kind of, the gunslingers walked into town, and this is, the showdown, the epic showdown moment. You need space for that. And cinematically you would have a long shot, and you kind of have a trump in and kind of the shadow, and
you want your Sergio Leone moment with a big long pan across the high street, the two characters facing off against each other.
So I think it helps a lot to think of it in terms of filmic terms. But of course, the comic is a different animal. And I didn't even show you some of the panels. You can see it if you look at the book, where Inaki's really played with the panel layout in ways that I would never have been able to imagine. It's insane. It is ridiculous. I don't even know how he does it. And I'm like, what? How was I supposed to come up with that? Because I'm supposed to come up with it. I'm supposed to put it in the script and say, this panel is a long panel down the side, and then there's a short panel here. And luckily, they just ignore me. So
there is a case against that. The previous year here, Grant Morrison, and then again this year, we're discussing the fact he's saying that perhaps the pendulum's gone too much to writers recently in a lot of the comics. He said he's trying to make a conscious effort to say, when it comes to describing a page, he's going to be a bit looser in his description and say, I'm going to let the artist do, because the artist is the visual part. That's their expertise. Let them do more of that sort of thing,
And you've seen my art. I need help.
I just inked it. I told you.
Yeah.
From your art. No, just something that Bill Willingham said. I read it somewhere. There was that a script is a start of a conversation with the artist. Yeah. I think that's perfect. Exactly.
No, it is absolutely. And some of the most beautiful moments have come through. In the short that we did, which was kind of my audition script for Vertigo, it was. all the pretty ponies in Strange Adventures. And what happens is that there are rich people who like to go on mind rides, and they lock into someone else's head, and you can experience what they're experiencing. So if they're a porn star, you get to experience what it's like to be a porn star for a day, or a pro footballer, or a US Navy Marine, or whatever it is. And what's illegal is that you're not supposed to go into poor people. There's human rights conventions about you're not allowed to exploit the poor. But of course, this is the ultimate thrill for like the rich elite.
The ultimate slumming.
Yeah, no, the ultimate slumming. But the poor obviously have illegal hookups, and Inaki drew it in such a beautiful way. It's this, like the rich is kind of this Bluetooth headset thing, and it's really lovely. And the poor is this kind of copper, and it's kind of, he drew it kind of biting into their skin, and you could see a little bit of blood. And there's a moment where the rich download into the poor to kind of experience. And just in the rough sketch, there was something in the character's shoulders. And I was like, it hurts. Of course it hurts. Why didn't I think of this? And it was just such an amazing moment of collaboration where we've kind of fed off each other, and something that he'd drawn changed the way I thought about the story. And that was really amazing. There's been stuff which has come up, which he's drawn, or like beautiful moment between the characters, which makes me rethink how their relationship is working and what I actually need to be saying in this moment, and do I actually need to change the dialogue, because that expression and this dialogue is no longer working, and that expression is better. So, and that's what I love about collaborating, is that you're not carrying the entire load, and you're riffing off someone else's creativity, and that's amazing. Yeah.
I'm afraid that's our hour run past already, far too damn quickly, I think. Lauren and Inaki will be signing over in the bookstore tent in a minute, if you could give us all a few seconds to get out ahead of you, but they'll be over there in a minute and you can get your books signed. Just remains to thank them very much for coming here and talking to us today.
I went to see Lauren Beukes and Inaki Miranda, who've just collaborated on a fantastic Vertigo title called Fairest. It's a spin-off from Fables, which has been going for about 10 years. And each volume of Fairest is going to focus on one of the sort of canonical princess figures. So they've just done Rapunzel. And they've done it in this incredibly exciting way. They've given her this buried past in Japan. They've introduced characters from Japanese and Zulu mythology, and the artwork just looks completely stunning. It's amazing. Fables has been my favourite comic for a long, long time. But I wait. As some of the people were saying at the Q&A today, we divide into the people who buy it monthly and those of us who can't stand the cliffhanger. So we have to wait a year until it comes out and we get the whole story. Well, they collaborated together, and they collaborated completely long distance. Today is the first time they've met face to face, and they talked about how the story developed and the absolutely astounding things that Inaki Miranda has done with the form of the storyboard, the way that he dissolves these panels and disintegrates them and whirls them together. It looks completely stupendous. So we saw original drawings, we saw sketches. Lauren was very funny because she also showed her less expert sketches and then what Miranda did with the same idea. So it was a really eye-opening casebook, really, of how to do something completely wonderful. I love this festival. I wish I'd been to more things. I was very busy at the start. I did get some tickets well in advance for some key people. I saw Judith Kerr. A lot of it's been illustration based, which is fabulous for me. I love that visual element, and that's quite new this year, this whole strand of the comics thing. I saw Posy Simmonds, the famous Guardian cartoonist, and also a graphic novelist of extreme wit and elegance. Judith Kerr, 90, drop-dead gorgeous, so witty and funny, and another sort of hero of mine since I was very small. So these have been absolute highlights. When Judith Kerr walked in, the place was packed. It's the biggest theatre, and there was this extraordinary cheer. She's held in such great affection, and it's so nice to see someone who at 90 is still that sharp and clear and funny.
I thought it was really interesting. I must have been to half a dozen other events during the book festival, and I think this was really interesting just to get a sense of the process of how it was put together and how it works. And I've just honestly, it's kind of a black box. I would never have given any thought to. I can consider the struggles an author might have in trying to write a novel, because in my own work I write quite a lot, but I've never given any thought to how a graphic novel would be put together. So it's been really interesting from that perspective for me. I bought the comic book today, and I'll take it home, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it. Yeah. I've been to book festival for several years. I presented a couple of years ago one of my own kind of academic books, well, kind of crossover academic books too, but this has been, I think, the year I've actually attended the most things. I've probably attended half a dozen events, and I've spent more time in the book festival than the other festivals put together, which wouldn't have been the norm actually.